Hey Bill, how are we doing?
Excellent. How are you?
Fan- Fantastic, yeah, really good. So I'm just back from Fxrp, where I've just had the opportunity of riding a Pan America all the way from England, all the way down through France and into into Switzerland, Italy, Liechtenstein, and then into Austria to Fxrp to European Bike Week. So I've had a great time. Unfortunately, I didn't get off road, but and that's what we're going to be talking about today, isn't it? Off roading and adventure touring.
Yes, absolutely.
So for the guys that have joined us on Facebook, Bill, can you just give us a little bit of who you are and why we've got you on from the museum in Milwaukee to tell us a little bit about this adventure tourism touring section and the off-road section. So, Bill, can you just introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about why you're here.
Yes, my name is Bill Jackson. I'm the manager of Archives and Heritage Services for Harley-Davidson Motor Company. And we are stationed here at the museum. So the archives is part of the motor company. We help out not just museum staff, but other company staff. We try to help out the dealers where and when we can and do research and support the exhibits like this one we're in today, off-road. I should go stand over. People can see the big kind of panel here.
Fantastic. So, Bill, we had a chat probably a couple of months ago now when the museum was just starting to get opened up, and we had a bit of a chat and a tour of some of the other bits of the museum. But we thought it was important that we just come back, and it's the newest exhibit, I believe, isn't it? The off-road exhibit or the off-road area, and it would be nice to know a little bit more about it.
Yeah, so when the Pan America came out, the question came up about Harley Davidson's history in off-road motorcycling, which even some employees came to be a bit surprised at how much story there actually was. Um, and we could go back to the earliest days and talk about with Harley Davidson's first real factory, so to speak, was on a dirt road. So the bikes to some degree had to be able to competently handle that. But I'm going to switch my camera here as we talk around so people can, instead of looking at me, look at the exhibit. So we're going to do that and make a couple changes here. Hopefully this losing video here for a second. There we go.
There we go. That's perfect, Bill. We've got a view now of the bike.
Yeah. So among the earliest bikes, and what I'd like to do is maybe frame this as a quiz, and we'll talk later about the origins of this bike. This is Harley-Davidson's sport model. This is a 1921. And of course, it's on-road capable. But those of you who are enthusiasts for vintage British motorcycles are going to recognize the design. And what I specifically mean by that, I'll see if I can focus in here. It's got an opposed twin engine. You're going to see that's the intake and exhaust manifold. Hopefully, yeah, right here. That's actually shares the same manifold. You can't see it from this side, but it's got an external flywheel. And maybe a little bit later, some people can post in the chat or offer up what British model does this very strongly resemble? Because we know that it did. But this bike, it's a bit smaller displacement. Harley marketed them to women, among other things. It did well in Europe. It topped a mountain here in the U.S. called Old Baldy. So maybe people, will definitely say where it came from. So Harley called it the sport model. And it really was pushed for a lot of, the versatility. Like you'd see these old enthusiast covers, and there's Jack Fletcher, on the top of Old Baldy. And so this bike didn't live a real long time in our history, but it's definitely got an important place. You can even see, I think not this, yeah, probably the tire tread pattern. But it's a fun bike to look at, and it's very well balanced. Those of you who know that engine design, very, very smooth engine operation with that opposed twin design. And we're incorporating more and more into our exhibits here stories that aren't necessarily strongly held in our records, but they're held in other archives museums. So we found out about a gentleman named Hamilton Lang who called himself a motorcycle naturalist. And he called his bike Barking Betsy, which I think is awesome. But um, he rode into the remote regions of the United States and Canada, and he wrote articles about wildlife and the landscapes. And got that fantastic photo there of him standing on the seat. This bike was not his bike. This is just our collection bike, but it's emblematic of what the 1914 Model 10F was. But we have other stories like this, where another one is a gentleman named Theodore Worley, who was part of, today it's called the American Lung Association, and of course they help raise money and battle lung diseases, but earlier versions of that agency was called the Anti-Tuberculosis Associations, and what they did is they would travel and educate people about how to protect themselves against tuberculosis, because it's just like today, one of the ways that you can fight some diseases is through public education. So Theodore Worley was very avid about teaching people about fighting TB, but he was also a very avid outdoorsman, and he traveled the state of Wisconsin here in the US on a Harley-Davidson. Harley came to donate a series of bikes to the WATA, and they even had what they call it the Cross of Lorraine. It's a double-armed cross, but we've got photos in the archives of bikes with that logo on it, and they would travel the state. In one case, Theodore Worley came and spoke here in the city of Milwaukee, and was so avid about what a great job the motorcycle was doing for him. He made it a point to have the motorcycle with him on stage as he was presenting to people about tuberculosis. So, and he actually went to wrote, you can probably read this here, but he went on to write a pamphlet that Harley marketed called Camping Hints for Touring Motorcycles. And it's really, really fun because he's even got hand-drawn diagrams about how to distribute the luggage on the bike. Let's see in this photo here again. I'll just come back to that for 1 second. But recipes for soup. It's just really, really funny. It's 1915, so there's a lot of great stories like this. I'm gonna walk down the gallery here. Many of your folks probably already knew this, but so you know about Sportster, which came along in 1957. And the first Sportster was the XL model, which was a street-friendly bike. It really was for on-street use. But the second Sportster that came out one model year later was the XLCH. And what CH stood for was competition hot. There we go. And you can see this is an off-road bike. There's no headlamp, there's no directionals, there's no rear tail lamp. And the XLCH for a number of years in its early years really was continued to be like marketed as a bike that you could take off-road. And this is another collection vehicle that has been in our collection for many years. But we're actually doing a workup right now for some internal employees about just the sheer versatility of the Sportster line over its lifespan. And there's some great film footage that plays here of Sportster scrambles. And that's film footage that you probably all know about scrambles, but I was telling a tour group earlier this morning that it's about finding just a piece of land, hopefully track, and some real challenging terrain. And I think at some point it's going to loop to a guy who wipes out pretty hard. And but these were popular, and they were grassroots events. The clubs would organize them, the dealers would organize them. Here we go. Hope that guy was okay. And that's film footage from our collection. There was the ERS Sprint. The Sprints were based on, really, it's a very long story, but when Harley bought an Italian motorcycle company in the 1960s so that they could gain a foothold in Europe with the smaller single-cylinder bikes, the Sprint was the very first. So it's a single-cylinder arrangement. You can see how that engine is arranged. I'm sure many of your viewers here are familiar with what some of them called the Ermaki bikes, but for a time, Harley-Davidson had its own professional motocross team here in the United States. As a matter of fact, in the 1970s, Harley-Davidson's product line had expanded quite extensively into, Americans call them dirt bikes, but motocross style bikes that were very much for off-road use. And I always have to I'm jumping around here, but this is one of my favorite photos in the collection. That's no less than Walter Davidson with a bike, and that was part of an endurance ride that he did um, with a very, very muddy road. And you can just look at that road, and it's hard to imagine riding pretty much anything through that, but Walter did it. He was a very accomplished rider. I'm going to walk over here. I said I wouldn't go strictly chronologically, but this is one of my favorite stories and bikes in the collection. So this is a 1985 Harley-Davidson Fxrp police model. And for 1988, there was a one-time rally held in South America, and they called it the Trans-Amazon Rally. It was over 9,000 miles with an allotment of 25 days to complete. And this gentleman, his name was Charles Pete, and he actually bought the police bike, and he outfitted it, and your viewers are going to know this. That's not a Harley-Davidson gas tank. That's actually a gas tank off a BMW. But he actually wanted to compete this thing in some of the toughest terrain that they could dish out in the Trans-Amazon Rally. He was actually voted, so I should mention that you could enter basically any car or motorcycle you wanted, and there's a fascinating documentary about this rally. Mr. Pete was voted by the other motorcyclists at the beginning as the least likely to finish, and it was like, you're going to take this big, heavy Harley police bike and campaign it in the Trans-Amazon Rally. Yeah, right. Well, he actually finished, and one of only 3 motorcyclists to even finish. And you want to talk about basic grassroots organization. The Trans-Amazon Rally, they didn't even have it another year because it was so kind of like loosely put together. And it's just one example that I think is just an amazing part of the story. There was no medical support. So if you ran your car or motorcycle and you were injured and the nearest town was, 30 kilometers away and there was no doctor in that town, well, figure it out. And there were some injuries, but I think that's probably one of the reasons that it wasn't held any more years than that, but it is a fascinating story. And so those of your viewers who've seen the series Long Way Up on Apple TV, and that features Ewan Mcgregor and Charlie Borman. It started a series many years ago called Long Way Round, in which they went around the world, and then this one they went from the southern tip of South America to Los Angeles. And that's a Harley-Davidson livewire. They specifically wanted to use livewire models for that program, just purely electric bikes. It's a great series. I highly recommend it. You can see some of the original dirt and mud on that saddlebag, which I don't think is coming off. But so the Harley owned the bike, and we knew it was going to come to the museum, and we specifically had a request: don't clean it up. We don't want this bike coming in looking like it just came off the showroom floor. We want to see how it looked after all of that riding in South America and Central America. So I had the pleasure of meeting Ewan and Charlie a few years ago, actually during their Long Way Round series, and just absolutely great guys and genuinely avid motorcyclists. There's nothing inauthentic with them. And then, of course, we'll not finish with, but come down to this end. Plenty of savvy people knew, because some of the marketers had asked, is the Pan America Harley-Davidson's first adventure touring bike? And the answer is no, it isn't. Those of you who will remember Buell had the Ulysses model. And it was built off of basically an existing platform, but obviously with adventure touring bikes, you're looking at higher ride height, definitely different styling, more capacity, different capacity for luggage, reduced weight. But so, adventure touring bikes as we understand them, it's really a relatively recent phenomenon. It's hard to kind of pin down what was, we were talking about the sport model. Was that the adventure touring bike of its era? Well, sure. But from that to Pan America, which I continue to see and hear great things from our riders, our dealers are excited and genuinely say good things. The great thing about Harley-Davidson dealers is that you ask them for their opinion, and you really get a true unfiltered opinion. And this is also, I think I told the story last time about how we acquire bikes, but we always make sure that every single model year is represented, which is what the founders of Harley did when they started collecting these bikes. And then their successors did the same thing. And so when we acquire any new model year bike, we always try to make sure it's the most important story for that year, which is obviously Pan America. So that's the quick flyby here of the Pan America exhibit. Is there any questions or heckling? Museum's open today, so we've got visitors. I think you're on mute.
Look at that idiot not muting himself. So yeah, so there's nothing come in yet, but I think it's important that we know where people come from. So we've got some guys watching us on the Hog and Mia page. We've got the Harley-Davidson UK and Ireland Facebook group, and we've also got YouTube as well for Hog and Mia. So if anybody's watching, stick in where you're from, where you're watching from, because we'd be delighted to know that. And if you want to know a little bit more about one of the bikes, make sure you stick in there as well, that you want to know a little bit more about each of the specific bikes. So I think I just find it fascinating when we see the stories about people touring on the bikes, because we've heard it all this year with Pan America that it's Harley-Davidson's first adventure tourer, and it really isn't. You know, people have been touring all over the world and all sorts of terrains on Harley-Davidson motorcycles for a lot of years, haven't they? And that's evident on this exhibit.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And by the way, if I could just, before I forget, a Harley employee made me aware of yesterday of a gentleman who showed up at Fxrp who is currently on a 100,000 kilometer trip on his Pan America. So thank you to that Harley employee, but thank you to your riders who send those stories to us, because that's often how we learn about those things. People might expect, because we want those modern day stories too. It's, you know, we're happy to tell the story of Theodore Worley and Hamilton Lang. We're happy to tell the story of our sport model, but keep those stories coming in, because that's how the history gets continued. But you're absolutely right. You know, sometimes we joke about, in the days of these old hardtail bikes, how on earth could somebody log that many miles on a bike with no rear suspension, and you've got a sprung seat, but that's about it. Those old bikes beat the living what out of you, and the answer is yes, they did, but they rode. And clearly, they just enjoyed themselves so much. And we've seen that in some of the old diaries and journals and letters that people say, I wouldn't trade this experience for anything, because they love the outdoors, they loved moving around, and it shows how sometimes what's old is new again.
So we've got a comment here from Yade, I think, Yade Kidam. He's watching from Israel, so thanks for helping him to enjoy the museum all the way in Israel. I think you've gone back to the live wire there. I mean, that is another fantastic story, isn't it? To go a long way up and talking to we did another live. We did a live with Steve Field. From Hog, and they're one of the original founders of Hog in the Harley Owners Group. And when I was talking to Steve, Charlie Borman actually was walking past me at the Adventure Bike Rider Festival. So I grabbed Charlie and we had a chat about Livewire, because one of Steve's favourite bikes is the Livewire, and they had a good little chat about the challenges of touring on an electric motorcycle. Do you think that's the direction we're going to be heading, Bill? Is that something that we've got more of in the future? Is that we're going to get more resilience to planning our trips and using the electric?
That's an excellent question, because I think certainly I'm not an engineer and I'm not in product development, but the capacity for electric vehicles is going to change, right? When I go online, and this is a topic that I'll go and find videos on because I'm fascinated about it, and I want to learn more about it. What I think everybody agrees is not going to happen is the things like range for electric vehicles is just going to stay where it is right now. Because you've got companies that are looking at things like electric pickup trucks or electric cargo trucks, which when you think about the kind of cargo capacity and the weight capacity that those vehicles have to deal with. So I don't really know, but I think that it's exciting. And I think the reception from our dealers and some of our customers has really been moving, because I think sometimes people have a knock on Harley riders is that they don't want anything to change. Um, with the reception of the Pan America, I think, frankly, I'm not the expert, but it seems so positive. And even some of our more traditional customers, the guys you think that would always and forever want to be on road glides and street glides and softails, are really embracing this thing and saying, I'm going to trade in my street glide to get a new Pan America. That really is amazing, I think.
So do you think, we talk about empowering freedom and encouraging freedom on the open road. Do you think that's part of the adventure touring, and that's where the Pan America thing is coming in, that it's having a motorcycle that is capable of going around the world, sat in your garage, and you know that you could, if you wanted to, set off tomorrow?
Well, yes, because I think an advantage with an adventure touring bike, if nobody minds, I'll walk around and show some of these great photos, one of which is really fun. But we've met the riders who've come through. Some of your viewers might know of a gentleman from France named Eric Lebeau. He's been here at the museum twice. He's actually toured the world. He's toured the world on Harley, and I'm talking a heavy touring bike twice now. But you need to be ready. Some of these folks who do these round the world trips, you need to be ready for just about anything as far as terrain. And it's not just here's a guy who's probably just a weekend warrior and he's just having some fun with his club, but if you're traversing Eastern Europe or Central Asia or some of these parts, it's not necessarily all going to be really well paved roads in great condition. And so I think that's where the adventure touring bike is. It's a cut above, and it's going to take you places that a lot of other models can't. And I'm just going to focus on this woman as your next question. A woman with a shotgun. So she's clearly hunting.
So I think it's brilliant to see these old photos and see the old faces and touring around. I think it's just fantastic. For me, it really is. We empower people, encourage them, and empower them to celebrate their freedom and go for a ride and go anywhere they want. And Pan America is almost like the latest innovation to that journey. Where have you been, Bill, on a Pan America? Have you taken one for a bit of a ride and been out on the open road?
I confess I have not had a chance to ride one yet, and the chance will dwindle here in Wisconsin because before long it's going to get colder. Probably within about 3 months we're going to see some snow. So I do want to get out and try it out, but I've literally not heard a bad thing.
So I think you need to, Bill. You need to try the Pan America. We're going to have to make sure that happens sooner rather than later, so that you get a chance to experience what the rest of us are enjoying. It's been great this year to see the different journey and see the brand start to go in a slightly different direction, opening up those doors and just rejuvenated it. But I think you've just gone back to the scramble there, and I think that's the thing that looks like so much fun. And the motocross teams as well. When we're looking at that, people talk to us in the UK about when are Harley-Davidson going to do a full range of off-road motorcycles. Well, we've done bits of that in the past, and we've had fun on off-road motorbikes. This isn't a new thing for us, is it?
No, not at all. In fact, going back to the example of the ERS Sprint here, I mean, if anybody is an antique enthusiast, at least here in the US, and I think to some degree in Europe, these bikes can still be found in places like eBay Motors. We've heard a lot of good things over the years. They did go away for Harley in 1978. This was the entry level for a long time. And then when these bikes went away, Sportster took over as the entry level model. But they're still out there. But, the future, I think really the Pan America opens up really a new door, and that powertrain can be shared with the Sportster S, which we haven't even mentioned. Sportster S is obviously not adventure touring. That's a sport motorcycle. But it's a whole new powertrain, and we need to give ourselves permission to change our minds and to try new things, and I think we've been doing that. And the customer feedback, of course, is what really sparks it all.
And looking at that, I mean I think it was
Trans Amazon.
Trans Amazon. I mean, it just looks like it looks like it's been used, doesn't it? It looks like it's got. Can you imagine the stories that bike's got to tell?
Oh my gosh. We tried to locate Mr. Pete. I believe he's no longer alive, but part of it is he had to have the, I believe it was the handlebar clamp welded. He took a spill and the clamp, I think the clamp bolts are sheared. And he actually found a welder in a small town. I can't even remember which country he was in, but, so he got lucky. You could have a spill like that, and maybe there isn't a welder, or, certainly no motorcycle dealerships anywhere nearby. But this is another great example. I always tell people, this is a bike we will never clean up, at least if I have anything to say about it. Some of the original mud and dirt and grime, and, this bike looks like it's really been through it. And that's the way we want it.
I think I do a lot of work in the office, and we've always got the big screen TV on, and we like to have Harley-Davidson TV on in the office so that we can just kind of enjoy some of the stories and stuff. And we see the guys riding the Mint, and they're using Sportster as a frame and is a mechanism to ride on those off-road challenges. It just really goes to show that they're a great tool and a versatile device that you can really get out and about and make real use of. And it's just brilliant to see people customizing our bikes, taking them out into a different environment from what we designed them to be ridden on, and making a great day and having fun, just doing something different. So I'm curious, Bill. You nobody's come back to us with what this is based on. So nobody in Britain's worked out what it's based on or what you think it's similar to in terms of British bikes. So let's have a bit more about the 1921 Sport.
Sure.
Where do you think it's coming from, and where do you think that's going to?
Well, it's undoubtedly, and that's fine. Sometimes I assume there's at least an antique enthusiast, but so there was a British make called Douglas. And if you were to look up online, Douglas motorcycle, see, I was looking it up just yesterday, and I think it was maybe a couple of decades in the early part of the 20th century, but that very unique design of, again, smaller displacement opposed twin, external flywheel, the intake and exhaust manifold being shared. If you were to look at this, and I think you guys put this recording up online, you could freeze frame any of these shots and then compare it to a Douglas, and you're just going to see how totally similar it is.
So we got another comment here. We got somebody watching from Germany. Used to own a Buell Ulysses. Too bad he sold it. So somebody with a little bit of regret in life there. And respect to Harley-Davidson for trying something new, even if they probably won't own a Pan America. It's great, and we're getting this kind of feedback all the time. I see that you found the camping guide there. That's a great little book sat there in front of all that camping gear on the left-hand side. It's fantastic when you see the reprint of that and you have a read of it. It's just it might be from I think it's the 50s. Is it the 50s?
This pamphlet?
Yeah, or was it before that?
That's 1915.
1915. And all the tips in there still hold true today. So you read that and you look at it, and it's like balancing your bike and all that kind of stuff, and making use of it and going traveling. They're all really good tips for just getting out and about. We've got another comment here from Max watching in the Czech Republic as well. So great to see you, Max, joining us this evening from Czech Republic. Some great off-road riding and on-road riding across there. Around about Prague and all around that area that you can enjoy as well. So what's your favourite off-road bike, or the favourite bike in the off-road exhibition? So we keep putting you under pressure, Bill, when we're in the museum about what's your favourite bike, and I'm going to say that it's not fair, but it is fair. What's your favourite bike in the off-road exhibition?
I'm back to the Trans Amazon bike.
I knew it. I knew that was. It was one of two for me. You were either going to go to that one, or the other one that was well traveled as well. So I think there was you like those off-road stories, don't you? Like that used appeal.
Well, especially when somebody succeeds at something But when they started out, everyone around them said, "What in the world are you thinking? Are you thinking?" I have to say, I was reminiscing earlier today about like when Long Way Round came through and the Harley segment of that, because they were on BMWs in that first documentary. But I've met a lot of celebrities over the course of my 23 years at Harley. But Ewan Mcgregor was one that he walked up to me and he said, "Hi, I'm Ewan." And I thought, well, who else would you be? But there's that part of you once in a while that says, "Oh my God, I'm shaking hands with Ewan Mcgregor," because I was a fan of his before that. But just the fact, what's the saying? You shouldn't meet your heroes. But there's actually several times I met somebody of obvious fame and just they were such great guys. And Charlie Borman's a great guy too. So we're so fortunate to be able to partner with those folks. So many stories that you couldn't replace with anything.
So we've got a question here. So from Max. So speaking of off-road, would you mind to comment a bit about which model the Pan America origins from? Wow. So that's a cool question, isn't it? So where's the DNA of the Pan America?
Well, that's an excellent question because really I regard it as an all-new model because there was nothing in the sense of the larger kind of structural elements in the powertrain that carries forward from a previous model. This powertrain is all new for us. Now, obviously, I mentioned it. It's with the Sportster model, but really the frame. I mean, it's not call it a traditional motorcycle frame, but if you look closely, basically everything bolts back to the engine, and the engine serves as a structural element. Which is the interesting thing is that was the same thing with the Sport model, and that's nothing new in motorcycling, but this is really all new. And of course, there's things that do carry forward from other models like brakes and the tires that Harley uses. But really, this is an all new bike. So its DNA, I mean, do you consider the Buell Ulysses an ancestor? I guess in the sense that it was an adventure touring model, or you wouldn't go all the way back to the Sport model. I wouldn't, but so I hope I'm answering the question. I'm not trying to dodge.
No, I think you've absolutely answered the question. And I think that's a reality. There's loads of it docks its cap to loads of different models. With the front headlight to the road glide or the Fat Bob. There's lots of different things there. The styling elements to other Harley Davidsons, and it does feel when you ride it. It does feel like a Harley. It definitely has that appeal. It has that buzz about it when you ride it. And what's amazing about it is that when you pull up in a car park in a Pan America, there is still a queue of people that want to talk to you about where you've been and what you've done and where you've ridden. And I've had the pleasure of riding our bikes. Actually, it was the same colours as those, but we rode a Dutch Pan America for the Hog Benelux and Nordics team and the Hog UK and Ireland. We took it on a great relay where we were raising money for Two Wheels for Life, a great charity that raised money for bikes in Africa. And we rode it all the way to Nordkapp at the top of Norway, passing it between the chapters, all the way around through all of their countries, 13 countries in total. It came through the UK and Ireland as well, so all the way up to England, Scotland, Northern Ireland, Ireland, Wales, and then back into England, and then finished up at Fxrp, the European Bike Week. And it was great to see people looking at it and talking about it and having a coffee and a beer, just chatting about all the stickers on it, about all the places that it had been, and the stories that it could tell as well. So it was a fantastic opportunity for not only us to pass a baton, but pass the Pan America through things and actually get about. So yeah,
I'm so jealous.
There's no need to be jealous. It'll come around, Bill. Don't worry. It's you just need to. You've met Ewan McGregor. You've shook hands with Obi-Wan Kenobi. That's a different thing altogether, isn't it? So we got another question here. Any of the Harley-Davidson Kagiva, I think is the way we pronounce it, SS. Yep. Yeah. Have we got any of them in the museum?
If people are asking about MV Augusta, if that's the reference, because so obviously the person is knowledgeable. We tend to call them here at the museum the Italian lightweights. that division was sold off to Kajiva in about 1978. And then later on, it morphs into MV Agusta. So if that's the reference, we actually did not get time to get an MV Agusta for the collect. I'll have to double check on that. But so that's, I mean, the closest we have really is, you know, we have plenty of these bikes.
Yeah, I think that was where it was coming from. I mean, I've got a Z90 downstairs in the office, so if anybody's looking for a Italian lightweight in the UK, we're more than happy to point them in a direction of a bag of bits in my office, and then more than happy to come and get some bits. So we've also got Alex watching from Belgium. Great to see Alex. Always good to have you watching online there. And part of the team that helped to get the great relay off the ground as well. So fantastic to have Alex joining us and talking a little bit about that. So that's great stuff there. So we've got X90 there on the in the picture. So brilliant to see some stuff there with different people using different bikes. The other users come back and said, yes, it was a reference. You absolutely nailed it. He was delighted with what you were doing. That's where he wanted to be and what he was asking about. So I've got a question for you as well, because I said I would ask it tonight because it came up yesterday in conversation. It's got absolutely nothing to do with off-road, Bill. So you're going to be proud of me for asking this one. Why is Tourpak spelled Tourpak?
That's a good question. You know, we often are not able to answer that from our records. I think it's a branding exercise, and you see that with products all the time today. And I even remember that from my childhood, where a product is kind of deliberately misspelled. There's actually, I don't know if we have an example down here. With the seats, for many, many years, even a lot of your viewers are going to know this, the seats had a sprung post. This bike's got springs that are external, but you would have a sprung seat post, and they called that the full floating seat. And floating was spelled Floating. And it's funny, we've had people in the archives of the years saying, my God, couldn't they spell back in those days? Well, of course, I think things like that catch your attention, right? And it makes it easier for things like branding and trademark.
All right, Bill. So if you just want to take us for a little bit of a walk around some of the other stuff that you can see around there and show us that'd be great.
Outside this exhibit, you mean?
Yeah, just anything that's just handy to where you are.
Absolutely. Pretty short walk. I think last time we spent most of the time upstairs, but you'll remember the road galleries. There's a long, long line of bikes. We'll walk over to the Tsunami Bike. Did we cover the Tsunami bike last time, Gordon? I think there's a lag time, but so that's the bike that when the tsunami struck Japan in 2011. You folks are fine. A motorcycle that was in a storage container in Japan washed out to sea, and it actually made the trip from the Miyagi Prefecture in Japan in March of 2011 all the way to British Columbia by way of ocean currents. It took just about a year, just over a year. And so the container had just enough buoyancy to float all that way. So you can see what a year's worth of ocean salt water does to a motorcycle. And again, stop me if I've covered this before, but when the bike was found, and that's actually, our security people are going to yell at me, that's the way the bike showed up on the beach in British Columbia. And Harley-Davidson Canada actually, using the VIN number, was able to get hold of the owner and said, this is really amazing, and can we offer you another Harley-Davidson? And the owner's response was that he was putting his life back together, and he had lost his home, but he said he wanted that bike to come to the Harley-Davidson Museum, and so here it is. It's really incredible. I mean, what would ever imagine a motorcycle making a trans-Pacific trip, and things continue to rust and degrade and fall apart. It's a little bit darker in here, but So that, but it even looks rougher than it did a year ago. So it just continues to do that, and there's some sand and things falling off of it. But in a bit of the levity part, and this still cracks me up because you can find it on the internet, is somebody out there in the press made a comment that Harley-Davidson's going to get that motorcycle running again, which if you were to go back and look at that bike, nobody's going to get that motorcycle running again. So, and then again, stop me. We just show you a new acquisition. This is the very famous bike for especially Mexican enthusiasts. Alfonso Sotomayor was a very accomplished stunt rider in Mexico. So this bike is relatively new acquisition, permanent acquisition. We worked with the family, just wonderful people to talk to. Terminator 2. So this is authentically one of the 5 motorcycles that was in the film Terminator 2 Judgment Day. And Harley did not formally support it, among other reasons, because Fat Boys were in such demand that the filmmaker James Cameron actually had to go out and find 5 different bikes at 5 different dealerships. And some of you will remember the scene in which Arnold Schwarzenegger places John Connor on the gas tank. And so these pegs were put here for the actor who played John Connor, whose name is escaping me right now, on those pegs. So that's the Terminator 2 Fat Boy. There is, of course, the Easy Rider bike, which this is a replica, where I was careful to point out this is not the original movie bike, but this is just arguably the most iconic chopper ever made. And so, got to put that on display. Somebody asked on a tour this morning about my favorites in the overall collection. We're walking over to a green and white Duo Glide here. What the video can't convey here is the awesome condition that this bike is in. It turns out that green did not come out until the following model year, 1959. Only about 40 of these bikes were painted in this color for a shrine group here in the United States. And a dealer was visiting the archives many, many years ago, just after I started. The dealer said, I remember that paint job. I'm the one who sold those shrine bikes. So this is arguably the only 1958 Duo Glide in that specific green and white. And just the condition is astonishing. So it's another, actually, we were talking about the Sprint before. This was a Sprint Racer, the CRTT. It's pretty cool. Some of your enthusiasts might know Harley competed in the 250 class of MotoGP, and 3 years running in the mid-1970s won the 250 class world championship.
All right, fantastic, Bill. So we're getting some messages through from the team behind the camera. To wrap stuff up. Incredible, great story, great. Thank you very much. Loads of positive stuff coming out on this. It's absolutely brilliant for us across in the rest of the world, being able to tour the museum, see some of the stuff that you guys have got there on display, and actually be able to look at some of the stuff without having to come across to Milwaukee.
Come on through. I'm sorry, Gordon, you're breaking up. I fear we're losing you.
So your time out things. I think I've just got internet failure. I'm going to go with the complete internet failure. So I'm going to go, hopefully, it is absolutely take some of your time out of your day and take us around some of the exhibitions in the museum. It's absolutely brilliant to be. Everyone's really appreciates it. So thank you very much for your time and your effort. Appreciated. Have we got an Evel Knievel bike in the?
You're just barely
museum.
there. Yeah, so I got enough of that. Do we have an Evel Knievel bike, at least from the ground level? This is a replica. I do want to point out. and it's a replica of specifically the bike that Evil jumped at Wembley Stadium. And those of you who know your history, there was a crash on a practice run, and so that bike recreates. So we've got it hanging from. This is what we call the. Some call it the bridge, but you've got a. Excuse me, a motorcycle dragster here. And then hill climbers, there's a world record stoppie bike. Everybody knows what stoppie is, but Evil's bike is jumping off that ramp.
Fantastic, Bill. So I'm going to try and wrap it up at that because my internet keeps crashing on me. So in terms of things for me to say is just thank you so much, Bill, for all your time today. Really appreciate you taking us around the off-road exhibition in the museum. And it's brilliant to be with you again, joining you and seeing some of the stuff that you like and enjoy in the museum. And obviously,
you are very welcome.
We've got to find out, is Christina still hiding or is a wave?
Yeah, thank you so much, Gordon. Thanks to all your customers. We hope to have you guys all back again.